Tonight, Emmerdale delivered the kind of twist that makes viewers stop in their tracks. Moira Dingle has finally agreed to sell Butler's farm to Kim Tate, and the real shock is that she did it behind Cain's back. It is the very thing many people believed would never happen, because Butler's farm has never been just land or business to Moira. It is bound up with her family, her memories, and losses that can never truly be replaced. But with every pressure crashing down on her at once, from Joe Tate's blackmail to her time in prison and the devastating blow of Cain's illness, Moira seems to have reached her breaking point. She did not give in because she was weak. She gave in because she was exhausted from trying to hold everything together while the world around her was falling apart. Earlier, Kim had already made it clear that she was unhappy with Joe continuing to target the Dingles, even after she had told him to stop. Joe still saw himself as the wronged party after Cain attacked him, but Kim had no interest in listening to those excuses. When Joe tried to act triumphant and even told Lydia to open the champagne so they could celebrate, the mood immediately shifted. Lydia openly said what she thought, and Kim could only laugh at how awkward the whole moment became. Even in these smaller details, the episode made it obvious that Joe believed he was in control, when in reality, he had no real grasp of the emotions or intentions of the people around him. Later, Kim quietly went to see Moira in prison, and their conversation quickly turned in a direction no one expected. Moira did not waste time or argue any further. Instead, she was the one who offered to sell her share of the farm. Even Kim looked stunned, because she knew better than anyone how fiercely Moira had fought to keep that place. When Kim asked why she had stopped resisting, Moira stayed silent at first, as though she could barely admit the real reason even to herself. Only when Kim pressed her for the truth did Moira finally reveal that Cain has cancer. That was the moment that made it clear this decision was not born out of cold calculation, but out of the very real fear of a wife being forced to choose her family over her pride. She even admitted that Cain knew nothing about the deal, which shows just how torn she still is inside. She knows Cain will be hurt, angry, and may even feel betrayed, but she still did it because right now, protecting Cain and protecting their family matters more than holding on to the land. What stands out is that Kim also showed a rare flash of sympathy. Once she heard the truth about Cain's illness, she no longer looked at Moira as an opponent in a negotiation, but as a woman cornered by circumstances. Kim agreeing to the deal, and even promising that Moira would always be allowed to visit Holly's grave, gave the whole scene a quiet sadness, as though this was no longer just a business transaction, but the closing of an entire chapter of Moira's life. Meanwhile, back at Home Farm, Joe was still in a celebratory mood, convinced he could enjoy his victory. But that satisfaction was quickly shaken when Kim told him that Cain has cancer. In that moment, Joe seemed to understand why Graham had once chosen Cain over him. Even so, the fact that Joe still wanted to keep celebrating after learning the full truth only made him seem even more unpleasant in the eyes of viewers. It is not just that he lacks compassion. He feels almost obsessed with proving he has won, no matter the cost. After this twist, the biggest question is what happens next to Butler's farm and to the Dingle family themselves. Robert Sugden had previously been promised the role of tenant farmer by Joe after selling his share of the land to the Tates, but it is far from certain that Robert will actually take it. More and more, it feels as though Kim is the one holding the final decision, and it would not be surprising if she pushed Joe aside and offered the tenancy back to Moira and Cain instead. The real question is whether, after everything that has happened, they would even want it back. Cain is the one who could cause the biggest storm. Earlier, he made it absolutely clear that the farm should never be sold, even saying that the Tates would only get it over his dead body. Because of that, once he learns that Moira secretly agreed to the deal, his reaction is unlikely to be calm. He may understand why she did it, especially with illness and chaos surrounding them both, but understanding does not mean accepting it straight away. Cain has always been the sort of person who becomes angrier the more pain he is in, so the possibility of him exploding and trying to stop the sale feels very real. The detail in next week's episode that shows Cain looking for farmland only adds to the sense that he is nowhere near ready to let go. And if this sale really does go through, the next major question is where the whole family will go. Butler's farm is not just where Cain and Moira work. It is their home. If they are forced to leave, Wishing Cottage seems like the most obvious option, even though it is already overflowing with Dingles. There is also the possibility that Chaz could take them in temporarily at the Woolpack. The idea of Cain standing behind a bar sounds strange, but in Emmerdale, it is often these unwanted changes that open the door to a new chapter for a character. The story also creates another possible consequence involving Robert and Aaron. If Robert does take over the tenancy of the farm, Aaron will immediately be placed in a difficult position with his own family. The Dingles would never easily accept him siding with Robert, especially if the full truth ever comes out that Robert not only benefited from Moira losing the farm, but was also connected to the chain of events that helped push her into prison. If that happens, everything could explode in the truest sense, and Robert and Aaron's wedding would be far from the peaceful future they are hoping for. This episode is shocking, not simply because Moira sold the farm, but because it shows that even the strongest person can eventually be forced to surrender to circumstance. Even so, this does not feel like the end of the fight. It feels more like the moment when tensions have been building for so long that they are now ready to erupt on a much bigger scale. Cain will not easily accept losing Butler's farm. Kim may not let Joe do whatever he wants. And Moira, even after signing the deal, still does not feel like someone who has truly let that place go. That is why this twist feels less like an ending and more like the beginning of an even bigger storm.